Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Jangres Khan. Our today's topic for this lecture is biophysical limits to economic growth, the Malthusian perspective. This lecture consists of two parts, and it is the part one of this lecture. This lecture is based on material taken from Hussain 2004 book titled Principles of Environmental Economics. After listening this lecture, after watching this lecture, you can give a detailed reading to the relevant chapter in Principles of Environmental Economics written by Hussain 2004. In this lecture, we will discuss as evident from the title of the lecture, Biophysical Limits to Economic Growth, the Malthusian Perspective. We know that the environment is affected by different factors, and there are different approaches to find out the causes of the environmental degradation. And the Malthusian perspective is one of the theory which deals with the association of the scarce resources and the prospect for long-run economic growth. It shows the relationship between the economic growth, the resource scarcity, the environmental degradation, and relevant factors. The term Malthusian refers to a particular perspective on association of resource scarcity and the prospect for long-run human economic growth. The perspective has its origin in the work of an English economist, well-known economist, the Thomas Malthus, 1766-1834, who is well known for his theory on population. Malthus is a well-known economist, know who presented the theory of population. The basic postulates of the Malthusian doctrine is resources are scarce in absolute terms. Humans have finite amount of material resources. According to Malthus, the resources are scarce. The resources are limited, and humans satisfy the unlimited wants with these human resources. If population is uncontrolled, it will grow exponentially. According to the Malthus theory, if population is not controlled, if the steps are not taken, if proper steps are not taken to control the population growth, then it is expected that it will grow exponentially. It will grow very rapidly. And as the step number one, the postulate number one of the theory shows that the resources are scarce. The resources are limited. If the population is not controlled and it grow exponentially, then it will create a large number of problems for the humans as well as for the environment. Technology should not be perceived as the ultimate escape from problem of the resource scarcity. The Malthusian claim economic activity cannot be expected to grow unless the population growth rate and the rate of resource utilization are effectively controlled. According to Malthus, for having a good economic activity, the resource of the resource degradation, exploitation of the resources, and the enormous growth of population should be controlled. Limits to growth would come through either the depletion of key resources or large degradation of the natural resources. Meadow et al., 1974. According to the Meadows et al., 1974, if the limits to economic growth are the limits of economic growth are actually the depletion of the key resources or large-scale degradation of the natural environment. As we discussed in our lecture previously, again and again, so many times we discussed that there is a link between the economic activity and the environmental degradation. So, if we want to achieve the economic growth and we have not controlled the depletion of the environmental resources, then it is possible that we may lose too much scarce resources. Population resource scarcity and limits to growth, the simple Malthusian growth doctrine. In this topic, we will discuss the relationship between population, resource scarcity, and limits to growth. This lecture, this topic is based on the Malthus book, an essay on principles of population as it affects the future improvement of mankind, which was published in 1798. It was the first book having concern for human population problem. It is a very good book which pointed the drawbacks of the rapid increasing population. Malthus set out three assumptions in this theory. The total amount of land available for agriculture is fixed. According to Malthus, the land for agriculture is fixed. Number two, the growth of population is limited by amount of food available for subsistence. And number three, human population will invariably increase where the means of subsistence increase. According to Malthus, if not prevented by some checks, the tendency is for population to grow geometrically, and while the means of subsistence grows arithmetically. According to Malthus, if the population is not controlled, if some steps are not taken, if contraceptives are not used, family planning is not followed, the population growth rate, the birth rate is not controlled, then the population will grow geometrically. Like, geometric progression 2, 4, 8, 16, etc. Similarly, the food production, it grows arithmetically like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If we compare the growth, then the growth of the population is very rapid. So if population is not controlled, it will grow very rapidly, and it will grow at a very faster speed than the food production, and it will create many problems for the human beings. According to the theory, if imbalance between the population growth rate and the means of subsistence is not resolved in long run, misery will automatically suppress the reproductive power of population to a level consistent by means of subsistence. In other words, population growth, if left unchecked, would lead to decline in living standard to a level barely sufficient for survival. This means that if the population is not controlled, if we let the population grow its own will, then we will be short of food production, we will be short of resources, and the population will fall below the subsistence level. This was called the doctrine of Malthus. It is more formally also called Malthus' iron law of wages. The theory can be explained with the help of this figure number 1. Let me take a sketch of this diagram so that we may explain it in a better way. So let me take the screenshot. Yes, it's okay. It's okay. Bring it here. Oh no. Oh no. One minute. Yes. So this can be explained with the help of this figure. Let me explain this figure. We are having this problem in setting. So I was talking about the Malthus theory that we can explain it with the help of this figure. And in this figure, we assume that the quantity of labor is a proxy for the population size, while the real output Q by L is a measure of per capita income. Figure 1, this figure shows the relationship between the real per capita output and the population size. The relationship assumes fixed amount of resource, land and technology. It is assumed in this figure that the population, the land is fixed. Technology is similarly, the technology is also fixed. So on the x-axis we measure the population size represented by labor, while on the y-axis the real per capita income has been measured. The Q shows the agriculture or food products in general. In figure 1, the per capita food output Q by L was initially rising. We see this Q by L, this per capita, this Q by L per capita food production. We see here that initially it rises. It crosses the subsistence level and reaches its maximum, that is L1. And then if the population continues to grow, that this is with growth of population, initially it is growing, the food production is going with increase in the production, while beyond this L1 level we see that it is falling till L2, and beyond L2 we see below the subsistence level. So coming again to the slide, we see the positive association between population and per capita food production will continue till the population size is reached L1. Look here. This is population. This is per capita output. This we see that the per capita output, this is initially increasing. With increase in population, we see the slope is positive, which means that when increase in population, the per capita output increases. We see here the positive, and this association continues till this point, where we see that it is a maximum at the L1. Beyond L1, the farm labor productivity started to decline with each successive unit of labor force. If we add labor here, look, we are adding here, we see a decline in the output, per capita output. Since land is associated to be fixed, land is fixed, more and more labor applied to a given plot of a homogeneous quantity of land yields a proportionately smaller return. With increase in population, the demand for food and fiber also increases, so the production of an additional unit of farm output requires progressively large quantities of labor. In the figure 1, Q star by L star, this line we see, this line represents the output unit of labor sufficient for survival. This is the subsistence level of food. When the labor is increased beyond the level 2, beyond this level, L2, what we see that this per capita food output this decreases with the increase in the population. According to Malthus, the natural tendency of human population is to continue growing as long as the per capita food exceeds the minimum food requirement for subsistence level, that's Q star by L star, ratio of the Q star to L star. On the other hand, any increase of population beyond L2, beyond this point, would be prevented by positive checks. We see by positive checks we mean Malthus means the earthquakes, the famines, the wars, the diseases, etc., which will automatically reduce the population. Or to use Malthus terms by Weiss and Myrie, thus in long-term disease, malnutrition and famine will bring growth to a halt at L2. And finally, one interesting feature of the simple model is its suggestion of a optimum population size. It is the figure explained in the previous slides. We see that in the y-axis we measure the real per capita output, and the x-axis shows the quantity of labor, which is, as discussed, proxy for the population size. So, until the population level L1 or labor L1, we see the positive association between the real per capita output and the population. With increase in the population, the real per capita output increases. We see here this. Till the population reaches L1. At L1, the per capita output is per capita food production is at the maximum. Beyond this L1, if population increases, we see a fall in the per capita output and till the L2. And after at the L2, we see that which is shown by the Malthusian margin, that the output, the per capita output of the food production, it reaches the subsistence level, and beyond L2, it is below the subsistence level. So, according to Malthus, if the tendency grows, then the natural checks will control the population, bringing it back to at least the L2. Here the L1 is the optimum population, where the per capita food level is at its maximum. The following are the drawbacks of the Malthus theory. This was something about the Malthus theory. The Malthus theory was criticized by the many economists. First, it ignores the institutional factors that can affect population growth. This is the first criticism, that humans' population do not increase like rabbits. The social and economic factors compel humans to check their own population growth under adverse conditions, according to Cole 1973 and Simon 1996, that there are many factors which naturally control the human population. Secondly, Malthus theory simply overlooks the very important role that technology plays in upgrading the resource activity. For example, according to Malthus' view, at a given point in time, the amount of land available for food is perceived as fixed. But through improvements of farm technology, it may be possible to produce more food from the same amount of the land. The land is fixed, but technology can play its role. Because with the introduction of the new technology, we can increase the food production, the human can increase the food production, and this will be the negation of the Malthus theory. Technology can change uncultivated land into cultivated one. In figure 1, the effect of technological change would shift the average output outward. Hence, this would move the Malthusian margin to the right. In this sense, then the effect of chronological change is to make the Malthusian margin a moving target. However, this effect will not be sufficient to overprotect the Malthus main assertion that in long run humanity is predestined to a life at subsistence level. The third objection of the criticism of on the Malthus theory is that the Malthus model is considered to be ecologically naive, as incomplete from economic, technological, and ecological perspectives. Regardless of its simplicity, it's no doubt that the Malthus model is a very simple model. Let me have this. Regardless of its simplicity, Malthus' theory of population resources has remained subject of dynamic contention even today. On one hand, it is easy to dismiss the theory and its predictions on ground that almost 200 years have passed since it's presented. Yet our experience has been characterized by rapid growth in both resources use and population, along with significant improvements in the material standard of living on per capita basis. We see that even after the presentation of 2 years of the Malthus theory of population, we see that the population is increasing as well as technology is improving and the output is improving. So no such evidence noted. On the other hand, it is difficult to completely dismiss the Malthus since the main thrust of the dismal forecast is still applicable and of major concern to most of the developing and undeveloped nations of the world. For this, this lecture was mainly based on the Hussain 2004, this principles of environmental economics, and the resources, the references quoted in this reference list have been quoted in the text as well. Thank you very much.